Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing great, and you know what comes next. Pull up a stump, follow the 3 H's of the channel, and stay a while. Thank you for watching. My family hails from Tennessee. We're basically a bunch of hicks and rednecks, and we're full of crazy superstitions. One of them is about a glade in the woods where the trees have faces. The legend is that if you accidentally wander into this glade, the trees will take you, quotes. People have apparently been known to disappear out there, and I have my own personal story about this. My cousin and I went fishing in the woods. I was not quite a teenager yet, but he was 15, 16 years old. My cousin mentions the killer glade. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. He says that he wants to show it to me, but says that we shouldn't under any circumstances set foot in it. He kinda laughs about it, but I can tell that he's just playing it off because his face tells me he's dead serious. We walk right up to the glade without going inside, and sure enough, there's a circle of trees with heavily gnarled trunks. Especially at the bottom of the trees, the boles are very twisted, and they look like melted faces. There's 8 of them altogether. My cousin says, "Don't get too close, you don't want to be number 9. So fast forward years later, I was fishing with my cousin again. Apparently, some kids had disappeared in the forest recently. The killer glade naturally came up as the culprit. We decide to check it out again. We count them. There's 10 faces now. My cousin goes pale. I go pale. We were so scared that we ran out of there just like little kids. I'm hoping that we miscounted the faces the first time. Or who really knows? Maybe the trees did take those kids. A lot of weird things happen in Tennessee." This is something that I saw that my friends referred to as a wight, spelled W-I-G-H-T, that apparently resides in the woods near where I live. I'm a military vet. I'm not American. But I won't get into what I did in the military, just that my role was essentially like a scout and intel gatherer. So I also have combat experience, and for my role, it means that I can't be easily phased. So I live in a semi-forested area. There's some mountains near my place too. I had been having trouble with tweakers cutting through my property. Now, to dissuade them, I started doing semi-regular patrols. On one patrol, one day, it's particularly steamy. I'm sweating balls, basically. It's humid AF. So I decide to take a break. I find this old-growth softwood tree that's easily 15 feet around the base. Absolutely huge. So I sit, I lean back, and I take a swig of water from my canteen. The shade is a few degrees cooler, so I'm really enjoying the reprieve. Suddenly, a strong wind kicks up. A cold wind. On a hot, humid day. I perk up. Something feels off all of a sudden. I start scanning the trees, and I spot something overhead. I freeze. It looks like a human silhouette, floating 30 feet in the air. It's semi-transparent. I can see the alder trees behind it. It looks like the forest is embossed around the shape of this thing. I blink a few times, hoping that I'm seeing things and that it will disappear, but it doesn't. I'm overcome with a slow, creeping fear that seems to start in my lower back and work its way up my throat. It's hard to explain. I felt like that I was suddenly trespassing on someone's territory, like I wasn't welcome. I looped the shoulder strap of my backpack over my arm. I grabbed my rifle with my other hand and hopped to my feet. Before I can really gain my composure, I'm already running away from the floater, and as I flee, there's another strong wind that kicks up. It's a freezing wind, even in 98-degree sunlight. I'm panicking. I realize I've somehow gotten turned around, even though I walk this route all the time, and I know the terrain of my property like the back of my hand. I think, how the hell did this happen? I take cover behind a tree to appraise the situation. My heart is now pumping in my ears. I feel like I'm being watched from every direction at once. Eventually, I'm able to calm down enough to get my bearings and navigate out of there using a creek as a landmark. I do eventually reach my property. The fear subsides somewhat, but it bothers me a lot how I somehow got lost on my own property on the trail that I walk almost every day. I really hated this feeling, so I stayed out of that area for a while. I ended up meeting up with some friends. I told them about my experience. They're a bunch of, I don't know what you'd call them, new pagans, I guess is a term. They claimed that it was called a forest wight. Apparently, these things can follow you home, which is not good. They told me that I need to return to the forest, to that spot, and explicitly tell the thing that I have no quarrel with it, but it doesn't have permission to follow me around. I figured that it can't hurt, so I return to the old-growth softwood. I speak audibly into the forest, saying exactly what my friends told me to. My friends also suggested that I leave an offering, something natural. I leave this little wooden figurine that I made, and a bagel, and then I resume my regular activities. And after this, there was nothing else like this that happened in the woods. Nothing scary. It just feels like my property again. But there's still the occasional tweaker that I have to tell to get the hell out of my property. But that's besides the point. This is something that happened a few years ago, and it still shakes me up thinking about it. It's not really your normal type of cryptid. So basically, I had some days off, and I was eager to escape the 9 to 5 kind of workflow stuff. So I planned a mega solo hiking trip in the Rockies. I camp pretty often by myself, and I never do so without some kind of weapon or gun or something. So I packed my bare essentials, my MREs, my water filter, my tent, and my 357 Magnum for emergencies. So the first few days are pure bliss, nature's beauty and stuff. It really is soul cleansing, and I recommend that everybody do it once a year. Maybe just not in this area. So on day 3, deep in the woods, I set up camp in a sweet secluded spot. Night falls, and I'm sitting by the fire. I'm munching on MREs and really feeling like Bear Grylls in the moment. But then suddenly, I hear footfalls. Heavy footfalls. Not like a deer or an elk. Much heavier. I get that prickly feeling on the back of my neck. Some part of me knows what this is, even if I don't. I turn off my flashlight. I let the fire dim, and I strain my eyes. My heart is thumping louder than those damn footsteps, but they're getting closer, along with a very loud snuffing sound. I squint into the darkness, taking in all the light that I can. I make out a giant shadow. It's a bear. but not a regular bear. It looks different, almost prehistoric looking. It's more than double the size of a grizzly. It moves awkwardly through the forest and brush. My brain is going a mile a minute. I'm remembering a Nat Geo documentary that I used to watch about cave bears when I was a kid. I think, there's no way. Those things are extinct. I dig into my backpack and I pull up my 357. I grip the cold steel that's somehow oddly reassuring to me. This monster bear is sniffing around, probably smelling the MRE leftovers. I think maybe if I stay still, it will hopefully leave. If it comes close, I'll have to unload and just pray to every god I can think of. Eventually, it does just that. It seems to get bored, and the heavy footfalls begin to recede. I wait another eternity before even daring to breathe normally. I go into my tent and I sit there until morning light. I must have passed out at some point because there was some aftermath when I got out of the tent. My fire pit was everywhere. There were scratch marks so high up on the trees I could barely believe it. My pack that I had leftover food in was really everywhere. The ground was dug up, huge paw prints everywhere. I quickly, and as quietly as I could, took down my tent, packed up my garbage, and just started power hiking like an Olympian. Later on, I bumped into a group of other hikers. I told them what happened. They just kinda laughed me off, but said they would make a mental note. The next time that I'm going to go on a vacation, I'm thinking more of a beach, because I don't want to encounter any more prehistoric dinosaur bears. This is probably the most unbelievable thing that has ever happened to me. I hunt wild hog because they're terrible people, and they taste good. Now, I usually hunt with a 30-30 Winchester because it's not that hard to kill a hog with one, and it does the job just fine for many other things. Also, I can buy ammo in a pinch for a 30-30 living in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico, where more specialized ammo is very hard to come by. This time, though, I was hunting with an old Chilean Mauser. I just picked it up, and I figured it was worth trying on a hog. It uses 7mm Mauser, and I'd picked up some old round nose ammo for it, 175 grain tips. Anyway, I go into the woods. It's winter, so it gets dark really early. This doesn't matter because that's why I have a camper on my truck. There's been a lot of times where I got stuck out in the woods at night, so I just got an old camper to sleep in. Anyways, I managed to find one of the hogs. He wasn't far off, and I took the shot the same way I take it with my 30-30. It turns out, Chilean Mausers are sighted for long distance, so in order to hit something at shorter distances, you have to aim low. I shot straight over it. He squealed and ran off. I gave up for the night and got in my camper. Later on that night, I hear something making a fuss in the woods. I grab my Mauser and I go outside. It's a full moon, so I don't need a light. I think that this hog has come rooting around for a second go at whatever he was eating when I shot at him. And I thought, this time I'm going to get him. Sure enough, I see his silhouette in the distance. I begin to take aim, this time aiming a bit under him. He must have sensed something was up, because he walked away. Naturally, I follow him. It's not hard to trail a pig in the dark. They can't really see. So flash forward 10 minutes. Finally, I have eyes on him again. I don't have a great shot though. I start moving around slowly, making sure to not make much noise. That's when I stepped on it. I found the remains of a wild hog, and I do mean remains. There was some meat, but like the spinal cord and other bones and stuff. The skin had been taken, and there was no head. And because there was no head, it took me a little bit to recognize that it was a pig. While I was focusing on that, the wild hog I was hunting stood up to reveal that it wasn't actually a wild hog. It was merely wearing the parts of the wild hog that I was standing in that I couldn't find. It bounded toward me, letting out this awful screech. Instinctively, I raised my rifle at it. I don't know why, but I remembered to aim lower, but I aimed too low. I sent a shot flying at the thing as it flew toward me, and then I saw it, this disgusting creature, which to this point I thought I could repulse and terrify me no more than it already did. It let out a pained screech as its whole midsection and whatever it had for junk just exploded. It flopped to the ground lifeless. I took a minute to study it. It looked almost human, but it had these weird yellow eyes, and the skin was almost translucent. It was also wearing a pig's head and skin. It was really, really screwed up. I just kind of turned and left and went back to my truck and just kind of got out of there, I guess. But the next day, curiosity got the best of me. I went out to the area again. I couldn't find anything. No blood, no remains of a hog, and definitely not that thing. It's like it was never there. It's like something cleaned it up. This happened in the mid-2000s. I moved to Utah to work for an electrician for the summer. It was super hot out. I always did the, bitch work because I was young, wasn't trained, but I was still paid decently. I had good hours and the work was kind of fun. I ended up learning a whole bunch. Every day after work, I would hang out with my female cousin, her boyfriend, and their friends. I'll just use the first letters of their names to address them by. So my female cousin was A, her boyfriend D, and their friends. But the one this happened with, I'll call J. J was Native American and lived on the res nearby. He was a super nice guy. Very, very superstitious though. One evening, we're in the front room telling ghost stories and stuff. J starts telling the local legend about a skinwalker. Poor young naive me knew nothing about them. According to local legend, some tribesman long ago screwed up badly and got cursed. He must walk the earth until he redeems himself. Of course, he's pissed off about this. He has no body, so he possesses other living things. Anyway, out in the area, there was this old farm near the res that always had weird shit happen on it. Crops always failed for no reason. Residents see and hear things. A barn burned down right after being built. Constant accidents. The creepiest thing was the cattle. They disappear and then they reappear a day or so later, full of holes like Swiss cheese, drained of all their blood with no wounds, eyes and organs removed with surgical precision. People refuse to stay for long. The land ownership changes hands every few years. The government eventually bought it, fenced it all off, and set up sensors and stuff. Think Area 51, but less aliens and more fry sauce. People on the res Always knew if something happened there because the whole place would light up like a Christmas tree. Alarms, sirens, and everything else. So Jay tells us about this, and we're all young and stupid, and we tell him that he must take us there. Now to get onto the res, you have to be oot, or have one sign you on. Of course, he says F that. His grandpa told him to stay away from there like the plague. We badger him. We promise it'll be quick, just to look around, and we'll leave. Eventually, he relents. The sun had already set by the time that we left, so I grab a flashlight on the way out. I also grab a 30-30 off the rack. A freaks out a bit. What do you plan to do? Shoot a skinwalker with that? I say if I have to, I'll get its head mounted afterward, but leave me alone. It's just in case of animals and stuff. We get there. It was like a 30-minute drive. A and D are acting all antsy the whole time. Jay is also on edge. He tells us to stay close, stay quiet, and do what he says. We park the Wrangler on the side of a road and hop a cattle fence. We walk across a field and through some woods. Thanks to A's incessant bitching, I left the rifle in the Jeep. It was against my better judgment, but what can you do? It's quiet here. We head toward the farm. You know, the type of quiet that roars like a jet engine. I start feeling like someone is whispering to me from far away, and it's carried to me on the wind. My vibe has gone from weirded out to definitely unsettled. A and D both are absorbed into their phones. They're too distracted. Jay still looks somewhere between wary and scared. He kept stopping us and listening and looking around before continuing. We clear the woods and reach another field. Halfway across, Jay stops and turns around and refuses to go any further. I walk up to him and pat him on the shoulder and tell him that it's all right. I reach him, and holy crap, it's like I stepped out of a sauna and into Antarctica. It's suddenly freezing cold, a feeling that washes over me that I can only describe as unwanted. It was seriously like a feeling of like my mom had told me to go away and never return. I felt like crying. I felt dejected. And suddenly, it was gone. The looks on everyone's faces said that they felt it too. All of our feelings were now at their height. We were all pretty scared. Jay says we go back. Us, dumbass white teenagers, say we should keep going forward. D obviously wants to look tough for A. Again, my cousin. A would follow him anywhere. And me, I'm just a dumbass. Jay again relents. In retrospect, I wish that he was more forceful in telling us to leave. We finish crossing the field. We hit the next tree line. A chain link fence is within view. The second I cross the line, feelings of anger and rejection slam me like a sack of bricks. Like, think back to when you were a kid and just got punished for something that you didn't do. That sort of feeling. Rage against someone with no outlet. And then, it's gone. I'm WTFing hard. None of us are moving. I take a few steps forward, and boom, more emotions. Fear and hatred so strong that I could taste it in my mouth. It tasted like dry blood. And then it's gone again. Jay is flipping out, whimpering, saying that something was very wrong and we need to leave. A and D agree. I do too. But I tell them to wait just a second. You see, as far as I can tell, I was a masochist, but without the pleasure part. I push forward and reach the fence. Disappointing, really. A tall fence without barbed wire, not electrified. A few small buildings, and a bunch of stadium lights. Stuff like that. Just barren and boring. I'm so overcome by the meh of it all that I just turn around and walk away. I walk up to them and tell them that we're good to go. They didn't miss anything. And Jay is all, finally. We start heading back to the tree line to cross the field where I felt abandoned again. On that border, we all stopped. This was unplanned. We all just did, in unison, without any reason. It's quiet. Still. Unnaturally so. My hackles are up. Moving my head felt impossible. Air was physically hard, like solid. I could feel it pressing against my cheek like a board. Then, to my right, I see movement, and there it was, a ball of light. Hand to God. It was about the size of a basketball, fairly bright, and it didn't hurt to look at. It floated at about waist height. I'm staring at it, and it starts getting brighter until I have to squint. But when I look away, it goes back to normal. The sound's super dumb, but I can only describe it as a ball of emotions. It pulsed 4 times, one for each of us, I think. The ball flies off to my left. Then, we stood there forever, maybe a few seconds, maybe both. And then, alarms, a whooping sound. We collectively shit our pants as all the alarms start going off behind us. Lights all over the farm. I looked over my shoulder and was blinded instantly. That's how bright it was. We're hauling ass across the field. I can't see anything. I nearly twist my ankle, so I bust out my flashlight, which just kind of helps. When I passed the strip where the ball flew by, no joke, the grass had an electrostatic charge. I got shocked a few times just running. My feet probably touched the ground 3 times. I'm like a blur. We reach and hop the fence like Olympians. I'm the first to the jeep. I snatch the rifle from the back and start pointing it back at the lights. It seemed like it was the right thing to do at the time. Cut me a break. We pile into the Wrangler and wing it out of there like a bat out of hell. We're completely silent the whole ride home. We get back to the house. We're all in the front room. We can't sleep. No one says a word about the rifle, which remained by my side all night, except for A to ask me if I was a good shot. I'm from Texas. My hillbilly self was born and raised with one of these in my hands. There's no way that we're doing any more driving that night, and we were going to stick together because numbers equal safety, right guys? We stay up until the sun rises. We all feel silly by this point. We recount the story until it feels like a dream. Jay goes to his Wrangler to drive home after breakfast. The battery's dead, and it won't recharge. Our phones are all dead, despite being on their cords all night. My watch has stopped. My flashlight's new batteries that I put in before we left were dead. The devices in Jeep are fine, but we had to buy new batteries for them all. To this day, I can't go in a woods for any reason without a weapon, and preferably someone else with a weapon too. So, what'd you think of those? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own, or would you like to support the channel? There's links in the description for both. And one thing in particular that's pretty strange, this is kind of relating to the last story there. There's an area that is somewhat near to where I am that you feel a lot of the same types of things. There's a lot of, it starts like a staticky feeling. The hair on your arms and neck stand up for no reason at all. And this is like pretty deep in the woods. There's no houses or power lines around or anything. Just a super weird spot. And the longer you go, the more you feel like that you're trespassing into something that you don't understand. And you start feeling this sense of dread or a sense of vengeance or anger as you're going through there. And essentially, you eventually just turn around because it becomes like an insurmountable feeling. But yeah, it's weird how it's kind of a similar type of thing there. But have you had an experience like that? Again, I have an email in the description below that you can send them to if you want to. I'm just repeating myself now. Before I repeat myself too much more, I'm a little late now because it's Wednesday, but I'm just going to say, Happy Remembrance Day or Veterans Day, depending on where you live. Our veterans are important. So, with that, I thank you for watching the video. I thank you for pulling up a stump, and I thank you for watching. Make sure you follow the 3 H's of the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.